for coming to this fabulous afternoon session. Everything you never knew you needed to know about electric bicycles. My name is Troy Herman, your moderator today. I did not have enough evaluation sheets for everyone in the room. Feel free to tear off a sheet of paper and just write, Jeff's session was awesome, and I want to learn more about it.
Sessions was awesome.
Jeff's session. Jeff Feldman's session on electric bikes was awesome. But feel free to make your own evaluation sheet, bring that to us later, and or put this in this highly coveted secret envelope right here. And if you are an engineer or landscape architect and you want to prove that you're here today, after the session is over, feel free to come and put the stamp of your choice next to this session for your continuing educated credits. And feel free to grab that. And with that, I will turn it over to my friend Jeff Feldman.
Thanks. Again, my name is Jeff Feldman, and I'm a crazy cyclist. I love cycling. I cycle every single day. I built a shed in my backyard with just bicycles in it. So I'm kind of crazy. I'm also a serial entrepreneur. I've had about 4 startup companies in my life. I've had some very successful ones, and I've kind of retired. But when I see things and I see opportunities, when I can see the future, I want to jump in. I get that itch again to jump in. And about 3 years ago, I saw the first electric bicycles start to emerge. I saw a Specialized, I saw red turbo, and I jumped on that thing and I went, whoa, this is pretty cool. But it's kind of heavy and it's hard to turn, and it was just a little too cumbersome. So I started to kind of follow the industry, and I have been for the last 2.5 years spending time talking to China almost every single day, and we have developed and bought from China about 20 different prototypes of electric bicycles in the last 2.5 years. We evaluate them, we look at what we like, what we don't like, we sell the prototypes here in Lexington after we put 400 or 500 miles on them, and then we get the next prototype and bring it in. I'm not ready yet to release. We are the name of my company is going to be called Switch Cycles, as in switch on. But I don't think we're quite ready yet. I think as I see the industry, I see that in 2016, 175,000 electric bikes were sold in the United States. 2017, 225,000 were sold. By 2020 or 2021, there will be 1 million sold in the United States. That's a big number. There's only 12 million cars sold in the United States. So that's almost 1 out of 12 modes of transportation will be an electric bicycle. So that's why I see the future. I'm an entrepreneur. I love cycling. I meditate on cycling. But this is what got me interested in this subject matter. So I'm really here not really as the entrepreneur. I'm really here as an educator today and an advocate for electric bicycles. And some of the things that we need to consider as we go. Do I get this right? Okay. Today, just the general issues that we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about definitions and why you would want to ride an electric bike, the parts of an electric bike and how they work, the classes of e-bikes. Yes, there are going to be classes of e-bikes. What the federal standard kind of is and what states have done currently, what new state legislations have identified as new legislation, what considerations we should make, what local control an individual municipality or city can do with electric bikes, and then we'll do questions. All right, so definition. E-bikes are bikes that have an electric motor that is generally powered by up to 750 watts of power. Now that is the federal standard. That's the Department of Transportation standard. Many e-bikes are powered by pedals that propel the bike with or without help of an electric motor. So what that means is there's really kind of two kinds of electric bikes. Ones that are only pedal assist bikes that you must pedal to get the motor engaged. Or there's another kind of bike that is a pedal assist with a throttle, which means that there's a little button on the bike that will actually let you ride the bike without any pedaling at all. That's going to be considered a class 2. We'll get to that. Usually these bikes will go about 20 to 28 miles an hour. That's with pedaling. Now that's, this class 1, that's with pedaling, you'll be able to go that. And there's reasons for that. And the reason is that the industry has determined that in a class, well, for example, in a class 3 bike, a 28 mile an hour bike, that will keep you up with traffic in an urban environment. And so you're not slowing anybody down, you're kind of flowing with traffic.
And that matches our state laws for
Exactly.
bicycling operating in urban environments as well.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that. If you're confused about electric bikes or pedal assist and throttles and everything else, you're not alone, because most states in the country still consider an e-bike a moped. That's what really most states still consider. And what is a moped? Does everybody know what a moped is? A little Vespa thing. Usually that Vespa is, or the little moped's got less than 50 cc's. It has an internal combustion engine. And so typically, most states are still considering the term e-bike as the same as a moped. However, other states have done other things, and that's what we'll start to talk about. So, what is this pedal assist? What does pedal assist mean? The e-bike is just a gentle boost to your pedaling. As you pedal, it's going to give you a little extra boost. And you can dial that boost in with the help of the controls on this bike to, let's say, I just want a 20% boost. So for example, if I'm ready to ride at 10 miles an hour, which is a relatively moderate pace, I can dial in, I want a 20% boost. All of a sudden I'm going 12 miles an hour. I can dial in a 50% boost to that 10 mile an hour effort that I want to put out. All of a sudden I'm going 15 miles an hour. I can give it a 100% boost, and all of a sudden that 10 mile an hour effort is going 20 miles an hour. That's what pedal assist is. Okay, why would you want to ride an electric bike? What is that all about? All right, that's a good question. One study shows, so if you lived in an urban environment, you lived in a city, and you didn't want a car, but you wanted a way to get around in the urban environment, there's a study out there that really shows that an electric bike, and here's just a picture of a general, fairly inexpensive electric bike, in terms of recharging it, most electric bikes will go 30 miles, 50 miles, 60 miles. This one over here will go 100 miles on a charge. But if you charge them up, let's say it costs you $390 a year in electric power to charge. And that's depreciation of the bike over 5 or 7 years as well. If you do the same thing with an automobile, it's going to cost you $9,000 a year. So that's a huge, huge savings. That's, of course, the cost of the car and the cost of the depreciation and the gas and the oil and everything else. E-bikes obviously can have a positive impact on the environment and public health. They're obviously zero-emission vehicles. It's just like a Tesla. It's kind of like a Prius, but not with the engine part, just the battery part. E-bikes can help mitigate traffic congestion, reduce emissions, obviously, improve air quality, and improve public health. These are all things that urban environments, city planners are working on. These are important issues. E-bikes make bicycling in the world more accessible to elderly people. So I'm a baby boomer. I'm approaching 70 years old. So I ride 200 miles a week on my regular road bike. Well, I'm not gonna be able to do that forever. So, but I'm gonna wanna ride until my mid-80s at least. So I figure at some point, I need a little help. And that little help is gonna be an e-bike for me. So they can, people with physical or health limitations are obvious candidates for an e-bike. To get their families around with electric assistance, e-bikes can make the roads safer for cyclists. And what that means is, the more bikes that are on the road, the more cars see bikes and then respect bikes. And the more people are out there, you're gonna get a synergy of people respecting each other. We actually, not to digress, but I worked in an advocacy group. I came from Utah, where I lived for about 12 years. And we worked on a project there that was called Road Respect. And it was this outreach from the Department of Transportation that said, we want to educate automobiles to be more respectful of bicyclists, and we want bicyclists to be more respectful of cars at the same time. And of course, the mission of this advocacy piece was 0 fatalities, because that was the energy that we wanted to put on. So the more bikes that are out there, that's why I'm a member of the Bluegrass Cycling Club. When I go out with 10 guys, we're a pack, and we stay together. And everybody's got flashing lights in the front and the back, and we are a pack. We're like a slow-moving farm implement going down the road, and about that same speed, and people feel that, okay, I can deal with that. And if there's 40 cars that pass us as we're going down the road, 39 will pull over, will slow down, will wave at us. I find this state to be extremely friendly to cyclists while I'm out on the roads. And that was not the case in Utah at all, I can tell you that. All right, e-bikes can get you there faster. I live 6 blocks off of downtown. I like to go to Thursday Night Live. I get on my e-bike, I get down to Thursday Night Live and park at the pavilion, right there at the pavilion, in about 3 minutes. That's how long it takes me to get down there. If I had to get in my car, drive down 6 blocks, find a place to park, it'd be 20 minutes. It's faster to get there on a bike. And again, e-bikes need to go all that fast to keep up with the average around speed traffic. And mostly that speed around the urban environments are in that 18 to 15 mile an hour range respectively. E-bikes can level the playing field. So my wife and I love to ride together. I'm a strong rider, and my wife is a very average rider. But put her on this e-bike, and she rides exactly at the same speed that I ride. It works perfectly. It gives us more time together. And that's another reason that we're in this. Again, another picture of an e-bike, a nice little step-through model. E-bikes allow bicycle commuters to travel to and from work without showing up and smelling like they came from the gym. Very important. E-bikes get people moving. They're, again, easy to park. Unlike cars, it's easy to find parking. And the most important, e-bikes are fun. I can tell you, of the 20 prototypes that I've sold and put people on them, I never, ever get somebody that doesn't have a smile on their face after they've ridden them, period. And people that get them become evangelists for them. They really do. It's an amazing piece of stuff. How far can an e-bike go? I think I kind of semi-covered this a little bit, but you know, there's a lot of e-bikes out there now. There's inexpensive ones. You're going to be able to buy an e-bike very soon for $1,000. It's not going to be a really good one. It's kind of like the Walmart of e-bikes. It's going to get you 20 miles. But if you live in the city and you only commute 5 miles to work and back, it's going to get you a round trip. It's not gonna have hydraulic disc brakes, it's gonna have mechanical disc brake. It's gonna weigh 65 pounds or almost 70 pounds. So again, as you're all cyclists, you know the cost of cycling is based on weight, and that is pretty much exactly the way e-bikes go as well. But again, this particular bike, which is the latest design that we have, my wife just rode this. We were up in Michigan at the Michigander Rails to Trails program put on by the Michigan Trails Association, 350 miles. I rode it on my gravel bike, and my wife rode it on this bike, and she got 100 miles on a charge. Now she's 120 pounds also. So me on this bike would probably get about 75 miles, because I weigh 175 pounds. Okay, here's a question. Do I still get exercise on an electric bike? You do. The answer is you do. A study out of the University of Colorado, Boulder, found that e-bikes are an effective workout. You can look that one up. Another study out of Norway found that riders of electric bikes experience physical exertion 95% of the time. That's pretty cool.
Jeff, that's when you run out of juice because you got too fat.
Well, yeah, if you did have a 65-pound bike and you ran out of juice, and then you had to ride that 65-pound bike back to where you started from, that might be a problem. That's called range anxiety. And we're actually working on, it's funny you mentioned that, we're actually working on an app that will connect to the bike, and we're in early development of this, that will let you say, I'm going from point A here to West 6 Brewery or wherever I'm gonna go, and then I have to come home, and I wanna make sure that I have 20% juice left on my bike when I'm done. And so what will happen is, if you put that in your phone, and then that communicates with the controller that's in this bike, it will only give you certain, remember 20% power? And you say, I want 50% power, it's gonna say, no, you don't have enough juice to get you there. So it will cut that out and make sure that it guarantees you to get there. All right, so what are the three components of an electric bike? All e-bikes have three things not found in conventional bikes. And here's an example. One is a controller. This is a little bit of a bad piece of information, only in that, and this bike here has that same, what's really an LCD, which is just a communication device. The controller actually is hidden down in the frame somewhere, which is actually a brain that puts wires in between the battery and the motor. This one has the motor in the mid-crank, which is the only way I design them now. In the beginning, they started all up with hub motors in the back, and they were way less efficient. These are about 50% more efficient with the motors in the mid-crank. Of course, they're also more expensive to put them in the mid-crank. And then the battery design, the good ones, this one happens to be a picture of Specialized, which of course is very good, does have a very similar, whoops.
Should go away on its own.
Okay. Has the battery hidden into the down frame in a very similar way that this particular bike does. It worked, by the way, the bike that I brought today, it doesn't look like it's raining, so anybody that wants to ride it when we're done, we'll just take it out to the parking lot, go nuts. As long as you wear a helmet, you're good, okay? All right, so there's, again, the motor, the battery, and the controller. Those are the three parts of the e-bike. Parts that make an e-bike different. And again, so you'll see them in different places, and I'm just gonna come over here for a second. So again, the controls are always up at the top, where you dial in that 20%, dial in that 50%. But again, the motors may be different. The motors could either be in that mid-hub, or they could be in that, or in the mid-crank, or they could be on the rear hub. And also, then batteries, the good ones to me always have the batteries in that down tube. It's a better center of gravity as far as I'm concerned in my testing, but you'll also see them on a rear rack. I don't know whether you've seen any of those. By the way, has anybody ridden an electric bike in here? All right, well that's very cool. All right, sweet. All right, how do I operate an e-bike? Well, it's really not very difficult. You just turn it on, you push a button that starts the engagement to the battery. You pedal, and once you pedal, it then adds to your pedaling power, and then literally you just push that button again and turn it off. And if you forget to turn that button off, it turns itself off in 3 minutes. So, and then what do you have to do? You have to recharge it. These lithium-ion batteries, the good ones, the Samsungs, the Panasonics, the LGs even, and then there's kind of a secondary sets of Sanyos and other ones, and then there's OEMs that are real cheap, which you don't really want. A good battery will recharge around 1,000 times. So if you had a battery that lasts 100 miles and you recharged it 1,000 times, that's 10,000 miles on a battery. Then you'd have to buy a new battery, which, yeah, $300 bucks. But if it wasn't a good quality battery, it might last half of that, and so forth. Obviously, you do have to recharge the battery. It's a little transformer, and you plug it into the wall, and you plug it into the bike. It's really not complicated. All right, easy to use controls. Usually on the electric bike, and the same applies to this one, you'll have a little plus and minus button. And that is simply to increase the boost or lower the boost as to what you want in the pedal assist. And then the display panel will usually tell you how much charge you have, how much battery charge by how many bars of, I think this one has 5 bars of power, this one has 3. And it'll tell you what the miles per hour is. How many of you have been in like a cycling class, like a stationary cycling class? Have you ever looked at, let's say, how much watts, the wattage is that you're pumping when you're on a stationary bike? You'll see if you're really working hard, you're pushing 200 watts. That would be, to me, pretty hard. You're sweating profusely, and you're really doing this. Well, this bike and all of these bikes will easily give you 150 watts, 250 watts, 350 watts. So if the pros are pushing 450 watts, if you're willing to put 200 watts out and you let the bike give you 200 watts, you're running 400 watts of power. That's pro stuff. Just to tell you how the handicap thing changes. It changes everything. And then what do? You charge it, you plug it in, there's usually a power switch that is separate to the battery. That's pretty typical. You charge the bike, you turn on the bike. Some different kinds of bikes. So just like there's regular bikes out there, here's a commuter bike, a bike that you would typically run around town in. A cargo bike, I've got one of these coming in the next set of prototypes. A nice electric, a dual suspended mountain bike. And then here's a recreational bike with the battery on the back, and you can see an easy step through. Some women are intimidated by some of the crossbars on the top, and they feel more comfortable with step-through models, particularly when you're going to a stop sign and you have to stop and then start again and stop again and start again. So just different kinds of stuff. I don't know whether this is going to work or not.
It should.
Let's see if it works.
Double click.
Oh.
Yeah, double tap it.
Y.
Oh.
Pull down on it.
Say hello Siri.
Doesn't look like it's set up for that.
Not gonna work. Okay. Now
Do you want to pull that up? Can you?
if we have time at the end.
Okay.
All right, so a lot of states have started to classify these bikes into class 1, class 2, and class 3 bikes. And I've kind of started to talk about what these are already, but now you're going to start to learn and understand the specific classifications. Very simply, a class 1 electric bike is a bicycle equipped with a motor that provides assistance only when the rider is pedaling. So it is a pedal assist bike only. And that ceases to give power after it hits 20 miles an hour. So it's like a governor on a car, same thing. All right, so 20 miles an hour, that's the max. Now, you're going downhill, you'll go as fast as you're going downhill.
Now,
But
doesn't it have a governor on it though? Like,
Well,
I've been on electric bikes and I couldn't go as fast down the hill because what was
no,
the
it won't
motor
stop.
turned
It
into a
won't
generator?
stop. My experience is it will not stop you going down a hill. It'll cut off power. It won't give you any more power.
Was there resistance in one of the hubs?
Maybe in some of them,
Okay.
but not my experience.
Not the regenerative braking model?
Well, I've had some with regenerative braking, but again, regenerative braking only works when you hit the brakes. That's how it gets the input that knows that, okay, I want to recharge the battery. Now, we're not doing regenerative braking. I've had some models and we've tested some with regenerative braking, and I felt like it added back, it was a big cost, and it added back 5% to the battery during, maybe if you lived in Colorado and you're going straight down mountains all the time, it might be more beneficial. But usually around here, our rollers are such that you can pretty much do it, and at least I don't see it in most of the country. All right, a Class 2 electric bike is the same as a Class 1. It still has the governor at, it still has the governor at 20 miles per hour, but this is the one that has the throttle. So literally you could be on the beach and you could have a fat tire bike on Daytona Beach and you could just hit that throttle and you're just on two wheels and you're going. It's a motorcycle. It's a slow motorcycle, but it's a motorcycle, okay? And then a Class 3 electric bicycle is the same as a Class 1 in that it is pedal assist only, but it will go 28 miles an hour instead of just the 20. The governor, usually it's got a little bit bigger engine, a little bit bigger wattage.
So why do you need Class 1 and Class 3?
The advocacy group that really kind of started this, which is People for Bikes, they kind of came up with the model legislation. They've got lots of studies that are starting to show that, again, this 28 mile an hour bike is primarily for urban commuting to keep you within traffic. Their mission is to get the Class 1 electric bikes that are governed at 20 miles per hour to be considered non-motorized for use on dedicated trails, such as the Legacy Trail or the Town Branch Trail. Right now, you'll go to those trails and those trails will say non-motorized, no motorized vehicles. And legally, that is the case. No motorized vehicles on those dedicated trails. However, states, and we're going to start to talk about which states have made those commitments, including Tennessee has made that commitment already, to call a Class 1 a non-motorized bike or a non-motorized vehicle. Okay, electric bicycles. Show me a bicycle group with a fully operative. I think we already got that. Class 1, we're just kind of going over that again. Class 1 is the low-speed pedal assist bike. We know that goes 20 miles an hour. The Class 2, the Class 2 is the 20 mile an hour with the throttle. And then the Class 3, which this does happen to be a Class 3.
What about throttles that go faster than 20?
No definition as of yet. It's maybe a moped.
It's called illegal handmade.
It's the industry is trying to cut that stuff out. I'm not saying that there aren't guys that are doing it, but the industry is saying we want something that is all the same, and we want the same laws as much as we can get them in all the states. All right. So what does it help? Having an e-bike classification system in place allows states to regulate slower Class 1 bikes as non-motorized use, okay, for dedicated trails, very simply. And here's a map of the US, states that have defined e-bikes. So in green, these are all the states that at least have some word of e-bike in some piece of legislation, whether it is moped or not moped or not. Now this is not saying that they have class 1, class 2, class 3. It's just saying they mention that an e-bike is something. There's some definition to an e-bike. As you can see here, Kentucky does not have a definition right now. However, I can tell you that in the last couple of years, some of the forward states that have taken up this issue, such as Tennessee, Utah, North Carolina, and Vermont, have all taken this up and started to deal with these classifications of e-bikes. And I know Tennessee in particular has done a very good job. I've been reading a whole lot about what they've been doing, particularly around Chattanooga and the mountain bike trails around Chattanooga, encouraging e-bikes and having good economic impact coming back to the cities for that. And that's really, ultimately, that is what it's all about. It is about having more people biking, more people coming to communities, more people spending money, and more people adding to the economy. Yes?
Jeff, I was just wondering, you're talking about regulations, and you know, anybody here that's ever ridden a motorcycle, you have to get a motorcycle license.
Right.
To train you about two wheels in traffic.
Right.
Does this envision, particularly the class 3, where you can keep up with traffic, that you're in traffic or you're out of traffic? Are you in a bike lane or are you in a car lane?
It kind of depends on infrastructure. And the answer to that, we're going to kind of go into that a little bit. You're kind of about 3 slides ahead of me. But
I can't help it.
I understand.
Well,
I understand.
what's
You can
what's the
operate a
difference
moped
between,
without an operator's license.
what's the difference between doing that and riding my bicycle at 32 mile an hour in traffic?
Nothing. That's
Or
really the
50
that's
cc
really the
moped.
answer.
No,
But
I mean, if you can ride 30 mile an hour for a short time in traffic.
all right, so here's Kentucky's from what I can research, and I may be wrong, but from what I have researched, this is what Kentucky says about an electric bike. Electric bicycle fits under the definition of moped under Kentucky law. You don't need a tag or insurance, but you need a driver's license. So you need a driver's license in Kentucky. Moped means that a motorized bicycle whose frame design may include one or more horizontal crossbars supporting a fuel tank, so long as it happens to have pedals, or a motorized bicycle with a step-through frame which may or not have pedals or no more than 2 brake horse. Who wrote this?
Troy.
Because his helmets are required, so. Italian. That's interesting.
All right, so Kentucky needs to get up to speed. All right, these are things to consider. These are considered issues. Should we talk about 3 states with a 3-tiered classification systems do different slightly in terms of helmets and age requirements? California and Tennessee require the operator and all passengers of a class 3 electric bike, regardless of age, to wear protective headgear. That's there on a class 3 bike. You gotta wear a helmet. While Utah requires only a rider under age 21 to wear protective headgear.
Do those states require helmet usage for motorcycles?
No, they do not. No, they do not. What about age restrictions? What do you do about age restrictions? With regards, all right, so in California and Utah, an individual under the age of 16 may operate a class 3 electric bicycle. The age limit is 14 in Tennessee. In Utah, those under 14 may not operate an electric bike with an electric motor engaged in public property, highway path, or sidewalk unless under the supervision of an individual parent or guardian. Additionally, in Utah, those under age 8 may not operate an electric bicycle with the electric motor engaged on any public property, highway path, or sidewalk. So again, different states are at least thinking about and talking about, do we have age restrictions? Do we have helmets? What do we do with this stuff? It's coming. All 3 states exempt an e-bike from, this is the key, all 3 states, all these new states that are adopting legislation, are exempting e-bikes from registration, licensure, and insurance requirements. Another key way are different between e-bikes and other motorized vehicles such as mopeds and scooters. All 3 states require an e-bike to be affixed, this is interesting, with a label that states the classification number, top assisted speed, and motor wattage. Now, I don't see the industry following that yet, but that is what those states have required in their law.
That was gonna be my question, is, are you seeing that enforced
I
at the
am
local
not,
bike shop
I
level?
am not seeing,
or-
I'm not seeing it in the manufacturing. I'm not seeing Specialized or Trek or
Right.
Giant or any of the big guys doing that
Doing that in those markets?
for those couple of markets.
Well, now what it says is, it just says a fixed. It could be on the motor and you can't see it because all the motors have wattages on it. That motor in that bike's got a wattage on it somewhere.
Internal.
Inside, yeah, it's stamped on the frame somewhere.
Yeah, but I'm assuming they mean easily legible, but I may be wrong.
If it's not written in there.
All right, and then where can you ride these bikes? Again, a concern that as they develop legislation, we need to be thinking about. California, Tennessee, both have similar laws with regards to e-bike operation on bike and pedestrian facilities. Both states permit electric bikes to be used on the same extent as bicycles on roadways and on street facilities such as a bike lane. That's the key. To me, as you say, it's really a bike. This is much more a bike than it is anything else. Class 1 and Class 2 e-bikes may be used on multi-use paths. Now that's in California and Tennessee. So they've even said that Class 2, the ones with the throttles, can be used on a multi-use path or trail, subject, and here's the key, to local regulation. So the state passes a law, and then the individual municipality says, I like that, I don't like that, I want to encourage that, I'm not so sure about that. I used to live in Durango, Colorado for a long time, and Durango said, oh no e-bikes on the multi-use paths. And then last year they said, okay, we're gonna do a 2-year study of electric bikes. So they're currently in their 2-year study looking at e-bikes on multi-use paths. Of course, you know, from a city point of view, what we don't want is we don't want electric bikes running over anybody. Obviously, we don't want that. And if people are respectful of other riders and pedestrians on the multi-use path, that's not gonna happen. That doesn't mean there's not jerks. There's always jerks. You can't get people are awful. Yeah, they're terrible. Utah law, the Utah law does have a separate facility standard for Class 3 e-bikes. Their law instead gives flexibility to localities, again, that's the key, and the state to restrict or regulate operation of any class of e-bike on a sidewalk, path, or trail within their jurisdiction of their local authority. All 23 states require a license to operate an e-bike. Overall, because, and the reason for this is because in most states, it's considered a moped. So if you're gonna follow the law, that's the law. Vermont examples have recently eliminated e-bike licensure and registration requirements, and some states, including Oklahoma and Wisconsin, define e-bikes in some manner still nonetheless require an operator's license to operate an e-bike. So there's a lot of work to do on defining these. There's a lot of work to do. And people have to get on them, people have to understand them, and people have to feel what they feel like and say, hey, this is really more like a bike than it is a moped. And once we all kind of understand more that it's more of a bike, then we're going to keep it under the same kind of rules and regulations that bikes have.
Well, would a motorcycle license cover that?
What's that?
I mean, if you've got a motorcycle license, wouldn't that cover it?
Certainly. I would
A
think.
driver's license with it. I mean,
That's
what I'm saying.
you can ride a scooter with a
Yeah.
driver's license.
All right, safety, that's a big question. It's a question that everybody wants to talk about. There was a 2015 survey regarding their opinions about e-bikes, people's opinions. 72% of respondents stated their top concern was safety, understandably. With respect to speed, the research is mixed and somewhat inconclusive so far, so we need more research. However, a study at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville's e-bike sharing system, that is an e-bike sharing system, did not find much difference in the average travel speed and average top speeds for e-bikes versus traditional bikes, and stated in their findings, with a few exceptions, riders of e-bikes behave very similar to riders of bicycles. That's the main focus right there. 2016 study examining relative probability of an e-bike versus a conventional bike to be involved in a traffic conflict did note that there was a higher risk of a conflict at an intersection for e-bikes because of higher speeds approaching an intersection. Otherwise, the study found little or no difference with regards to risk or actual conflicts. And then this is really the key. The key is regardless, not regardless, but on top of what the state decides to do, how to classify e-bikes, to regulate e-bikes in whatever fashion, the local municipality is going to have ultimately the control. Of the 27 states that explicitly define e-bikes, 11 states, Arizona, California, Colorado, Minnesota, Tennessee, Texas, Utah, Vermont, Virginia, Vermont, Washington, and Wisconsin, give flexibility to municipalities, counties, and state agencies to determine if e-bikes can be operated on roadways, trails, and paths in their jurisdiction. This is probably, as far as I'm concerned, the best methodology that a state and then a municipality can go. And that is, oh, what? Sean, I don't think I need that. That's it. So that's really the issue, is we've talked about what e-bikes are, we've defined what e-bikes are, we've talked about the classifications of e-bikes. Who wants to ride one? I do. All right, anybody that, I don't know what time are we? You got 5 minutes. I got 5 minutes, uh-oh.
Everybody gets to ride it for just a little.
Budget.
Does the Legal American Cyclists have any type of model legislation for this yet?
There is model legislation, I think, that is out there, primarily from people for bikes.
Not from the league, though.
Not from the league. That's who's pushing the model legislation as it goes from state to state. Yes.
I'm just curious, I don't know if you watched the Tour de France coverage this year, but
I watched some of
commercial. They had a commercial with Peter Sagan versus a grandmother, basically who
His
had
mother.
knee replacement.
His
Right.
grandmother.
And the grandmother was riding an e-bike and racing against Peter Sagan.
I saw, there's a really good, I wanted to show you that one video, but it didn't work out. But if you go onto YouTube, and maybe it's the same one, it's Giant is the one that put it on. And it's two, well, this one was a Giant one, and they're two professionals. One's got the Giant e-bike, which is, a racing e-bike, which is, 24 pounds, made out of aluminum with Ultegra componentry, with a 350 watt motor against a 14-pound carbon fiber Giant, the best they got. And the two of them are going up this giant mountain, and they start off together, and then the e-bike just goes right up the mountain. And by the time he's up about 10 or 12 miles, he's stopped at the coffee shop having coffee, drinking the coffee. The other guy flies by, he jumps back on his bike, catches him, and beats him by minutes. So it is the future, and that e-bike, so that electric bike from Giant retails for about $5,000, and of course the carbon fiber model is probably a $12,000. Yeah.
Do brakes have to be a lot better for these bikes, being heavier, faster?
I totally agree. All of the bikes that we are now producing as prototypes have hydraulic brakes.
Disc brakes.
Hydraulic disc brakes, and yes, when you get on this thing, if you know me, just come and call me up and come ride it. This thing stops on a dime. I mean, on a dime. If you've had hydraulic brakes on bikes lately, they're really doing good.
Can you ride in any kind of weather?
You absolutely can. I would, I have ridden this in a torrential downpour for 20 or 30 miles.
Didn't get shocked.
And it didn't get shocked, and nothing happened. I had to dry it out a little bit, but I've had to do that on my regular bikes too.
I don't know if it would harm the bike.
Everything is sealed. The engine is sealed, the battery is sealed.
So you don't need a bilge pump.
Don't need a bilge pump, yes.
I just, quick story to share. I had a Stromer for a couple years. I used it as a part-time commuter. And Frankfurt folks will know, or if you've been to the Capitol, there's a steep hill coming out of South Frankfurt called Lafayette. So I wrote this as I was in the category of rider that didn't want to arrive at work smelling like I'd been to a gym. And so I was riding up one morning, and a guy was out doing hill repeats on Lafayette, just working it, you know, and here I come on the electric bike, and I've got my work clothes on, and I just go cruising past him, and I just felt compelled to yell out as a cyclist. I said, "It's electric!" Because I felt bad for the guy. You know?
It's true. It's not.
How long would it take to,
Sorry.
how long would it take to charge the battery?
It's like charging a
Probably up to
laptop.
4 hours. Been my experience. Yes.
You're saying how braking is inefficient to recharge the battery. In the spirit of the Prius, there's coasting recharging. Is there technology being developed to recharge batteries through just coasting?
Yeah, I haven't seen that, but the key issue is how much of that energy do you wish to go towards forward momentum, and how much of that energy do you wish to go towards recharging batteries? So you have to make that.
You have to produce some resistance.
You have to produce that resistance, so that's going to slow you down at the same time. So what I have seen in these bikes, in some of the higher, I would say the higher end models, in some of the, one of the units that I had initially was a 3,000 watt model. It was a motorcycle. It weighed 90 pounds, but it would pop a wheelie and do 40 miles an hour. And that had regenerative braking on it. It was called, I think the one that was on the internet was called the Stealth Bomber. It was kind of like that version. But it was scary. I didn't like to ride it. I got rid of it. I sold it to a guy out of Nashville who came and got it. He rides it on his farm, dirt roads.
I forgot to tell you this. Costco had one on sale. They were out of California. They're bragging that they're assembled in the United States.
Right.
The frame is definitely made in you know, up in the Far East. But
Right.
it was $12.99.
Yeah.
And it was 20 miles an hour, and I rode it
Yeah.
around Costco outside.
That wasn't bad.
It wasn't bad.
Yeah.
It wasn't bad.
No, you're going to be able to buy bikes for, you know, a little over $1,000 when they hit. They're probably not going to have hydraulic brakes.
It didn't. It was mechanical.
It was mechanical brakes, and that definitely is an issue as far as I'm concerned, as far as safety. But it's going to get you around, and it's probably only going to go. The battery was probably going to go for an hour. Now, just in terms of if any of you are nerds like I am, I'm a total nerd, completely. So the batteries in these good ones are 500 watt-hour batteries. Now, the motor in this is a 350 watt motor. If you used the 350 watt motor to its max for an hour and a half, you would be out of a battery. However, if you are using only 100 watts to help you propel, that's 5 hours of battery life. 500 watt hours. So it's really kind of a simple mathematical calculation. Okay? Anybody wants to ride, somehow find me and I'll give them a ride.
Please fill out your comment cards and put them over here, and if you have your CD credits, get those ready.
Hi everyone, I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Kentucky Cycling Connections series. The Kentucky Cycling YouTube channel is a volunteer effort aimed at promoting cycling in the Bluegrass region. You can support this work by sharing the videos on social media. Also, please like the video on YouTube and subscribe to the channel. Thanks.